Haidong! In this video, we're going to talk about the 45 block. Now, this block has so many different names. I call it the 45 block because it makes a 45-degree angle, both going this way as well as going this way. So it kind of like fulfills a lot of those things. But 45 block is our block against diagonal cuts. And that is the block we're going to be blocking against for our defense focus. So without further ado, right, so the idea is someone's giving you a diagonal cut against your neck, and you don't want that. So if you're here, all you're going to do is just pop. Okay. Seems pretty straightforward, right? You're just going to stop the block, or stop the cut this way. Okay. But again, same thing we worked on with our Pao Sensei is engage the deep shoulders, pop, pop, that way. Okay. So you might wonder, how can you mess this one up? So this one, once again, again using the philosophy, is good against pretty much any diagonal cut coming towards your neck, and that will stop it. Okay, but once again, now I'm worried about what comes next, right? So I've stopped it. Now I need to worry a little bit further down the line. So let's take a look. So if I block a diagonal cut this way, am I completely safe? So, well, look, right? I'm really open on this side. So if someone were smart, and again, this is a very common technique in sparring tournaments, is if I'm here and I'm going to strike you in the temple, but you block it, so again, you block this way, all you do is just move around and strike the other way. I can do that with a Mizani. I can do that with just ducking under and maybe like stabbing or something like that. If I really dedicate to this block, I'm really open. So with that, this actually has a really quick fix to it. So the idea, and this is again something I'm taking more from HEMA, so again, my friends at Larch in Reading, is the idea of almost fighting fire with fire, right? This is not quite the way that was described to me. It's kind of the way I've adopted it. But the idea is like, all right, someone's trying to murder me to death with a diagonal cut. What if I diagonal cut them first? Pop, right? Notice this looks gosh darn like one of our guards, if you want to think of it that way, right? So I mentioned in our first blocking video, tip of the throat, right? Tip to the throat. I can just turn it. Probably not this, right? But I can keep turning it almost like a clock, right? This just raised, right? Or this actually extended is going to be the way to block a diagonal cut. Now you might think, so if I'm facing specifically the camera, you might think this is not blocking all of my head, right? But think about the geometry, right? So if I'm here, I'm more extended out for that block, their sword has to stop there as well, right? Their sword is going to be making contact right around here, right? That is displacing their sword. Their sword can't wrap around that. So as we both cut in this way, it's going to be, again, a test of wills, right? So if someone is just stronger cutting forward, they might just break through the other person. If the person is weaker, they might be broken through. And if they're too strong, we have actually what we did with our Federation block, right? Now we're here as opposed to here. Okay, so that gives us three different scenarios, right? So one of them is both of us are pretty dedicated, right? So we're pretty much at equal strength. So we're both here and we make contact. We're kind of stuck here. Now that's not necessarily a bad thing per se, right? Because here we can at least navigate around each other kind of from a new reset almost, right? So from here, what I'd recommend, right, for funsies, so if we make our contact here, I'm trying to, again, push more forward as opposed to across. Because if I come across, what happens? I'm open, right? And then you can just strike me in the head. Versus if I strike forward, if they release, right? I'm going straight towards you, right? And they don't want that. I want that, but they don't want that. So most likely what we're going to have to do is navigate around this. So what you can do, you can, again, pressure it and maybe see if you can like duck under and maybe go for the wrist or something like that. But this is kind of going further down the line of what you can do from this winding position, which is what HEMA calls it. So a winding position. Okay, that's kind of like the hardest situation to deal with because now you're equal. So if you really want to, you can kind of navigate maybe back off and kind of reset from a safer distance. If the person is weaker than you, right, we make contact, they're weaker, I could just finish my cut and go into your clavicle and draw through and deadsies. Not too bad, right? For me, right? Versus if they're too strong, so we make contact and you're really hitting me off to the side this way, you might think you're, in a good position because now my sword's over here. But as we mentioned, I can just move it around for a diagonal cut. I can move it around for a Mazami strike. I can move it around just to stab you in the throat. All sorts of things, right? So the major thing with this is it makes it more complicated, right? So again, our passive block is this one, right? I can just hold this out there. It's going to stop every single right diagonal cut, but also at the expense of me being able to counter you. Versus being active, so going in with your cut, again, intercepting it. If they're weaker, you keep blowing through. If they're the same, you really have to kind of navigate again. If they're too strong or do the Federation block, you can come around and strike them oh so merrily. But this gives you, again, more activity with it, which makes it harder to understand, but ultimately is more satisfying as a martial artist, and also just as you in a fight. It is a lot more fun to actually interact with another person as opposed to all right, I'm hitting a statue or something. So all sorts of fun things for you to think about. So I guess a brief note on this block, right? Or why we want to do this block. So what is our strongest cut? They might think well, it's probably the one we first learned, right? That's the one going into your cranium, right? No, I mean, that is the most lethal one, right? So if I receive a cut like that, I'm going down, right? So even if it's not even if it doesn't enter my brain, that's enough to concuss someone. That's enough to at least bruise someone, waffle someone if you're in a match. It is not good. Versus the diagonal cut is your strongest cut. Why? Because first of all, you can get your body behind it. All of your muscles can kind of twist into it to really give you that satisfying, powerful cut. So this is your most powerful. Therefore, we do want to have, at least initially at our disposal, a most powerful block. Again, this, you can really engage your hip, you can engage your shoulders, you can engage your arms to block it out. You can really stop that block, or stop that cut, and you'll probably live at least that initial cut if you're fighting someone who's not used to being stopped. But that said, a lot of people are going to resort to this diagonal cut. So again, if you've gone to sparring tournaments or any sort of just sparring event outside of kendo, because kendo doesn't like diagonal cuts, because the floofly doesn't protect it. But that said, if you're going to open tournaments, you're going to see a lot of diagonal cuts just because they're powerful, they're easy to do. Going back to our Pao Sung-se, right? So this is our relaxed Pao Sung-se. Even from here, I can just be yeah, or one-handed strike because I'm weird. You can do diagonal cuts from this really relaxed guard. I can do it from high guard. I can do it from normal guard. I can do diagonal cuts from most guards. Even something really low, almost like Dragon Tail here. I can come across with our diagonal cut. So that's going to be something that is something to keep in mind, right? So this is to block a very strong cut. So you want to make sure that you're doing it as well, right? So you want to be cutting in with your power, try to cut through theirs with equal measure, but do so safely if you're doing it with a partner. And with that, so I know there's a little bit more on the succinct side. I'm trying to be more succinct, but that's pretty much all you need to really think about, at least at the moment, right? So if you're going into this as a color belt, or even someone who's starting to teach this stuff, or someone who just wants to start using this in sparring and combinations and interacting with another person, which seems like a very distant idea in these COVID days, this is a good way to start. So with that, so make sure you keep training, stay safe, so wear equipment if you really need to make sure you do stay safe, and stay humble. Haidong